And those Indians, they got, you got the Aztec Indians, which is our, the Mexicans or the Isupk brothers. You got, you know, the North American Indians, which was Gad, and we got the Seminole Indians, which was Reuben. All right. Let's see here. So this is a lot of those brothers that's talking about. Some of them are Vigilites, some of them are Asher, and what's the other one over there? What's the other one? Like it goes with Cubans, Zebulon, and Naphtali, all of those over there. I'm sorry, it's more. I think it's more Naphtali. I have to check on that. But basically, that northern part of South America, a lot of those they call them the Arawak, along with a lot of those islands, such as in wherever the Taínos were, they just were a subset of that. So that's even Dominican Republic. Those are Arawak, but I'm more focusing on the uh, the north, the north part of South America, and something like the Caribbean islands. All right. All right. Michael Heckenberger, an anthropologist at the University of Florida, who helped found the Central Amazon Project, and his team found elaborate pottery, green villages, raised fields, large mounds, and evidence from regional trade networks that are all indicators of a complex culture. There is also evidence that they modified the soil using various techniques, such as you adding charcoal to transform it to black earth, which even today is famed for its agricultural productivity. So black earth. So this just goes back to even show you that we were always farmers, right? Always been farmers. You always be able to find the best way to farm and to make things grow. Farm. Check on it. So you're always good at making things grow. That's why they put us in captivity and forced us to grow their plants. That's why you didn't see them get a bunch of, Caucasians out there and start, producing plants and farming. That's why you didn't see that. They got us to do it because they knew we were the best at it, right? That's why they want us to be the sharecroppers and we got out of captivity. All of this because we knew how to make plants grow. That's just something we got from the Most High. That's our, giver was always good at making that happen. Um, this is talking about um, the dark earth. Where they would use charcoal and everything. It's a black soil. It's a terra preta. Is a type of very dark, fertile, artificial soil found in the Amazon basin. It is also known as the Amazonian dark earth or Indian black earth. In Portuguese, its full name is Terra Preta do Indio or Terra Preta de Indio, black soil of the Indian. So Terra Mulata, mulatto earth, is a lighter or brownish in color. Terra preta owes its characteristic black color to weathered charcoal content and was made by adding a mixture of charcoal, bone, broken pottery, compost, and manure to the low fertility Amazonian soil. So we made like the Amazonian soil was not good to make plants with. So we made it so it would be good to grow plants on. A product of indigenous soil management and slash and chark agriculture. The charcoal is stable and remains in the soil for thousands of years, binding and retaining minerals and nutrients. Terra preta is characterized by the presence of low temperature charcoal residues in high concentration of high quantities of tiny pottery shards of organic matter such as plant residues, animal feces, fish and animal bones, and other material, and of nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, zinc, manganese. Fertile soils such as the terra preta show high levels of microorganic activities and other specific characteristics within particular ecosystems. Terra preta zones are generally surrounded by terra coma, or common soil. These are infertile soils, mainly aqua soils, but also feral soils and organal soils. Deforested arable soils in Amazon are productive for a short period of time before their nutrients are consumed or leached away by rain or flooding. So, because all of the rain, because you know the Amazon rainforest, it rains a lot. So this holds the nutrients in the soil because it always seeps out and goes into the river. This forces farmers to migrate to an unburned area and clear it by fire. Terra preta is less prone to nutrient leaching because of its high concentration of charcoal, microbial life, and organic matter. The combination accumulates nutrients, minerals, and microorganisms and withstands leaching. So, so it's just a way that we would use basically to try to learn how to grow. You know, like we always do that. We always learn how to make everything work better, right? Because that's why we the salt of the earth. We know how to make. We the inventors of this earth. We make everything work. All right. Let's go back here. All right. Back to where we were. According to Hickenberger, pottery and other cultural traits show these people belong to the Arawakan language family. So the Arawakan is kind of like this is like kind of like they would call like a Hebrew, but you know other people are Hebrews as well, technically. So you would have for one like Esau is a Hebrew, right? Um, Ishmael is a Hebrew, right? All these people are Hebrews. Elam, Moab, all of those people are Hebrews. But then this we're like our Israelites, we're a subset of the Hebrews, I guess you could say. So you can look at it like this, that family. All right? And they based upon the language that so they'll have language that be similar to that. A group that included the Tainos, the first and Native Americans Columbus encountered. It was the largest language group that ever existed in pre-Columbian Americas. At some point, Arawakan-speaking Taino culture emerged in the Caribbean. Two major models have been presented to account for the arrival of Taino ancestors in islands. The Circum-Caribbean models suggest the origin of the Colombian Andes connected to the Arhuaco people, while the Amazonian model supports an origin from the Amazon basin where Arawakan languages developed. The Taino were among the first American people to encounter Europeans. Christopher Columbus visited multiple islands and chiefdoms on his first voyage in 1492 and was followed in 1493 by the establishment of La Navidad on Hispaniola, the first permanent Spanish settlement in the Americas. Relationships between the Spaniards and the Taino would ultimately take a sour turn. Some of the lower level chiefs of the Taino appeared to have assigned a supernatural origin to the explorers. Yeah. They supernatural, they the devil, right? The Taino believed that the explorers were mythical beings associated with the underworld who consume human flesh. That about sound like them. They do consume human flesh. They kill everybody. Thus, the Taino will go on to burn down La Navidad and kill 39 men. There is evidence as to the taking of human trophies and the ritual cannibalism of war captives among both Arawak and other Amerindian groups, such as the Carib and Tupinamba. So, once again, they're saying that they were cannibals. So, like I said before, cannibalism is like okay, you ever we're gonna get into this too, but the Salem, you know how the Salem witch trials were? The Salem witch trials, they would just say somebody was a witch that they didn't like. So this is the same thing. This is the Salem witch trials again. They're just saying that they're cannibalists, so they're not everybody else would hate them. Everybody thinks, well, we need to civilize people because they're just cannibals, right? But there's no evidence that you can find from them that say that they ate people, they ate each other, right? With the establishment of La Isabela and the discovery of gold deposits on the island, the Spanish settler population on Hispaniola started to grow substantially, while disease and conflict with the Spanish began to kill tens of thousands of Taínos every year. By 1504, the Spanish had overthrown the last of the Taino cacique chiefdoms on Hispaniola and firmly established the supreme authority of the Spanish colonists over now subjugated Taínos. Over the next decade, the Spanish colonists presided over a genocide of the remaining Taino in Hispaniola, who suffered enslavement, massacres, or exposure to diseases. The population of Hispaniola at the point of first European contact is estimated to be several hundred thousand to over a million people. But by 1514, it had dropped to a mere 35,000. By 1509, the Spanish had successfully conquered Puerto Rico and subjugated the approximately 30,000 Taino inhabitants. By 1530, there were 1,148 Taino left alive in Puerto Rico. So I went from 30,000 to 1,500 people. I'm sorry, less than 1,500 people. So Taino influence has survived even until today, though as can be seen in the religions, languages, and music of the Caribbean culture, the local. But I gotta tell you one thing too. They say that many people was left alive. There was more than that, but they don't count them because well, here's what would happen, especially in the Taino culture in Puerto Rico. That's why if you go like if you doing your research, when you research on Puerto Rico, you will see that they have like high mountains on the hills. So what they would do is when they were killing all of the Puerto Ricans, they went over to the hills to get away from them, the mountains to get away from them because they had the greatest advantage. So the Spaniards typically left them alone after that because they had what they wanted to have, which was the beaches. Because Puerto Rico, that's what we call it a rich port. Had gems and rubies and stuff. They would just be washing up on shore. So they had the land that they wanted, which is that's why you see Santo Domingo, places like that. That's what they wanted. They wanted those places so they could set up civilizations, tourism, of course. They wanted that. That's why you don't, that's why they got that stuff. They got that as a city there, and then they got the real. A lot of the there's actually a lot of Edomites in Puerto Rico, and a lot of their islands and whatever. A lot of those cities, the big cities. But like I said, the wood out there in the rural areas where the real where all of like a lot of them fled to. So. So it was more of them left, but of course they couldn't count them because when they got out of there, they weren't counted anymore. So they just kind of like built around Puerto Rico because they do the same thing with the Native Americans. So when we would fight them, and then they would give us like this little bit of land to be on a reservation. They would just build all around us, circle us in, So then now we can't leave. If we leave, we get subject to being locked in prison, but they always come right through our place like it's nothing. And they don't have to pay nothing. They ain't gotta go through anything. But if the Puerto Ricans or whoever, the Native Americans, if they leave that area, now they subjugated to fines and all type of, mistreatment from our oppressor, right? Okay. The Locono and other South American groups resisted colonization for a longer period, and the Spanish remained unable to subdue them. Throughout the 16th century and early 17th century, they are allied with the Spanish against the neighboring Colina, which the Caribs, which we'll probably get into them next week, who are allied with the English and Dutch. The Locono benefited from trade with European powers into the early 19th century, but suffered thereafter from economic and social changes in their region, including the end of the plantation economy. Their population declined until the 20th century when it began to increase again. Most of Arawak and of the Antilles died out or intermarried after Spanish conquest. In South America, the Arawakan speaking groups are widespread, from southwest Brazil to the Guianas in the south and north, representing a wide range of cultures. They are mostly found in tropical forest areas north of the Amazon. As with all Amazonian native peoples, contact with European settlement has led to culture change and depopulation among these groups. The Spaniards who arrived in the Bahamas, Cuba, and Hispaniola, today, which is Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and later in Puerto Rico, did not bring women on their first expeditions. Many of the explorers and early colonists interbred with the Taino women, who subsequently bore mestizo or mixed race children. These races include other indigenous groups, Spaniards, Europeans, and African slaves brought over during the Atlantic slave trade. Through the generations, numerous mixed race descendants still identify as Taino or Locano. In the 21st century, these descendants, about 10,000 Locano, live primarily in the coastal areas of Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana, with additional Locano living throughout the larger region. Unlike many indigenous groups in South America, the Locano population is growing. All right. This is about uh, the person named Tituba. All right. It says in 1680 to 1693. Tituba was an enslaved girl who was the first female to be accused of practicing witchcraft during the 1692 Salem witch trials. So of course, the whole Salem witch trials, they came for us first, right? Although our origins are debated, historical research suggests that she was a Kaluna-born woman from Tibito who eventually ended up in Barbados, where she was purchased by the Puritan priest Samuel Parris, who brought her to the colonial Massachusetts. Little is known about Tituba's life prior to her enslavement. It is said that she was named after the tribe or the town in which she came from. She became a pivotal figure in the witch trials when she confessed to practicing witchcraft while she was also making claims that both Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne participated in the said witchcraft. She was imprisoned and then later released by Samuel Conklin. This our early life. Tituba's husband was John Indian, an indigenous man whose origins are unknown, but he may have been from Central or South America to Beto, Colombia, to be precise. It's said that he was named after her town or tribe. Tituba may have originally been from Barbados. Media historians such as Elaine Breslaw and Charles Upland gathered that Tituba was a Native American based on Samuel Fowler's writing account of the life of Samuel Parris. Tituba may have originally been a member of the Arawak native South American tribe. While there is no physical evidence to prove this theory, it is believed that she was taken from her tribe and forced into the slave trade in Barbados, where she was sold to the Thompson plantation, where she was the family cook, as most Native American slaves were. Because of course, Caucasians they can't cook, right?
Right.
They think salt and pepper is the only seasoning, and mayonnaise. That's the only thing they add to any food, right?
Right.
As the Tuba interacted with a diverse group of people in Barbados, it is assumed that Barbados is the place where she picked up most of her knowledge about witchcraft from mistresses and other slaves. Once the head Once the head of the Thompson plantation died, the Tuba was inherited by Samuel Parris, and she was brought to Massachusetts. The often unreliable records of the enslaved person's origins makes this information difficult to verify. There are historians such as Samuel Drake who suggest that Tituba was African. Her husband went on to become one of the accusers in the witch trials. They appear documented together in Samuel Parris's church record book. Salem witch trials. Tituba was the first person accused to be practicing witchcraft by Elizabeth Parris and Abigail Williams. It has been theorized that Tituba told the girls tales of voodoo and witchcraft prior to the accusation. Tituba was allowed to speak against her accusers uh, despite their race because it was not illegal for slaves to give testimony in court. She was also the first person to confess to practicing witchcraft in Salem Village in March 1692, initially denying her involvement in witchcraft. Tituba later confessed to making a witch cake, but she confessed to making it after she was beaten by Samuel Parris. Tituba would also confess to speaking with the devil. In her confession, she stated that he ordered her to worship him and hurt the children of the village. When she was questioned later, she added that she learned the occult techniques from her mistress in Barbados, who taught her how to ward herself from evil powers and reveal the cause of witchcraft. It shows you that all that stuff is false anyway, because if you can make that happen and you can get yourself from evil spirits and evil powers, you had never been taken over by our oppressor, right? Since such knowledge was not supposed to be harmful, Tituba again asserted to Paris that she was not a witch, but she admitted that she had only participated in an occult ritual, which uh, when she made the witch cake in an attempt to help Elizabeth Parrish. Tituba, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne Warren were sent to jail in Boston to await trial and punishment March 7, 1692. Despite these confessions, there is no proof that she did the things to which she confessed. So of course they probably beat the hell out of her because she was a slave. So the devils they didn't beat them; they just probably tried them regular, but they probably beat her until she started saying that she made a witch cake and all of this other stuff, right? Other women and men. Oh yeah, and this is something that's practiced all the time. Like you see what happened to Central Park 5. They basically said, okay, you just admit to this, then we'll let you go home and all of this, right? And then they started admitting to stuff they didn't do, and all of a sudden they locked up in jail, and they got a sexual assault record on them now. And it took years for them to even get exonerated from it. So it's the same thing. They'll go in and make you give up. Like back in the days, It wasn't until just recently they stopped letting when you get interrogated that they'll beat the hell out of you. Like this is something new that they just stopped. I think like right around the time when we got I forget what you call it, but it's I think it's the Geneva Code or something like that. But it's basically like a code that you have between all military. So you don't treat their soldiers, but but only a certain bad. So you won't do too much to them. So that's so you only can do certain much. It's like a code that they have between like if you ever go to war, that it's gonna be an even greater. Like you just you can maybe like start you have to treat a prisoner of war with a certain amount of care. You have to treat them decently. So I think it's called the Geneva Code, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember, but that's what that is. So, all right. Okay. Other women and men from surrounding villages were accused of practicing witchcraft during the Salem witchcraft trials. Tituba not only used these outlandish accusations to stir confusion among the Massachusetts residents, she also used them to displace the punishment on her death sentence that could have been imposed upon her. So she used all of this stuff so that they wouldn't try to kill her. So she took being beaten over being killed, right? Sounds about right, right? When you getting interrogated, you start, like most crimes. If you like, when people go to jail for something, they don't. You ever heard you cop a plea, you do a plea deal or something like that. A lot of times they don't even do the crime, but they'll do a plea because they don't want to go and face the wrath of a jury, because a jury might see them as being guilty when they're not even guilty. So they'll do a plea deal so that they don't even, they'll get less time. So they'll have 25 years they'll be looking at, but they do a plea deal, they'll get 15 years and they can get released in 7.5. So that certainty of is better than uncertainty of if you're gonna make it through this trial or not. Right? By deflecting people's attention, she was able to prove that she was a credible witness, and as a result of the recognition which she received, her life and her reputation were both saved. So so she started saying they started thinking she was a credible witness on who was doing witchcraft, which witchcraft nobody was really, the witch that they tried to say was doing witchcraft is um, being a drug addict, making drugs. Like when you make meth, now that's what real witchcraft is. Right? You making potions to get somebody high, to get somebody to feel a certain way. That's what witchcraft is. Right? So all of the stuff that they're learning, all the stuff on witchcraft, it's all from. This is what I'm gonna tell you one thing. All of the stuff you learn, all the stuff witchcraft and all these things, they're from art, such as books, movies, novels, or they would even have times they would call it the ethics. Like we even talked about where the heaven and hell, like the heaven up here and the hell being down here. We talked about that. That came from Dante's Inferno. That's where they come from, story. So all of these things are come from stories, which we, like I said, we know real witchcraft is. Real witchcraft is you being a drug dealer, you selling drugs, you making drugs to get somebody high. All right. And it's not like you can be a physician who's in the way of trying to help people, but no, you just try to get people high so you take advantage of them. So you can get more money out of them because you're keeping them high and they get addicted to that drug, that's practicing witchcraft. That's how, like, you say you want to make somebody love you or whatever, you give them that drug, and if you're the only source of that drug, they keep coming back to you. So that's what all that's like, a love potion. Right? Tituba must have been aware that she could not hide from the accusations which were being made against her due to certain prejudices which people held against her based on her ethnicity. She claimed not to be a witch and denied that accusation against her, despite of her use of occult practices, admitting that the devil visited her appears determination to find her guilty. Yeah, the devil visited this whole earth, this whole side of the earth. The devil definitely visited, right? You see him every day in the police station, at your job. You see all the devils, all right? Her confession and accusation not only served as a scapegoat, they also served as a new form of entertainment to the residents of Salem as they experienced possessions because of her words. So now she's another demonic possession is when you go to church and you had the women jumping up and down, so they got the Holy Ghost. Yeah, they getting possessed. That's where that comes from. Right? Not only did Tituba accuse others in her confession, but she talked about black dogs, hogs, a yellow bird, red and black rats, cats, a fox, and a wolf. Tituba talked about riding sticks to different places. Started making up stuff to make them, you know. Yeah, so she changed it around. She was smarter than even the devil. So she made it like, so she riding on broomsticks to a whole bunch of different places. But if you a witch, if you really is a witch, like the witch in their mind, if they try to get you, they can't hold you. If you can ride a damn broom somewhere, why can't you get a broom and take the hell off, right? Go somewhere else. That just show you like our oppressor is not very intelligent in that way. Yeah, we know that. Yeah, they're heathens, man. They believe in stupidity. Really. So she started talking about used to ride on sticks to different places. She confessed that Sarah Osborne possessed a creature with the head of a woman, 2 legs and wings. Sister mixed various perspectives on witchcraft. So she using their own thoughts against them. Tituba's confession confused listeners, and its similarities to certain stock tropes of demonology caused some Salem village residents to believe that Satan was among them. So, so now, because she's talking about it, now all of them is looking at her like, oh, Satan is here. Satan got here. She using their fears against them. After the trials, Tituba remained in the Boston jail, which had very poor living conditions for 13 months, because several parents refused to pay her jail fees. In April 1693, Tituba was sold to an unknown person for the price of her jail fees. And in an interview with Robert Califf for his collection of papers on the trials, titled Moral Wonders from the Invisible World, being an account of the trials of several witches lately executed in New England. Tituba confirmed that Paris had beaten a confession out of her and coached her on what to say and how to say it when she was first questioned. So they, like I said, they beat them to get those confessions. So just like they'll do in a police station, they'll beat you and make you confess. You see a couple brothers, they confessed to something. You seen in the picture, they had black eyes, broken bones. They do that to make you confess. Right. Anybody on the conference line at all? questions at all? No questions at all?
All set. All right, so
Okay.
I got a question.
Mhm.
So in truth, we know witchcraft is like drugs and stuff like that,
Mhm.
right? So all this stuff you read, um, none of that stuff is even possible.
Wow. None of that. She ain't riding on no broom.
Right. But I'm saying, you know how, like, you got some people, probably like South Carolina, Louisiana, and stuff like that. Like they think you pluck out a piece of hair or clip one of the left toenails, they can make something and you be hypnotized or something.
Mhm.
Like you'll be, you know what I'm saying? Like like they do love potions and stuff like that. I know you have heard of a woman putting period in spaghetti or something like that.
Mhm.
But that stuff don't really work.
No, it don't really work, but it's like there's certain things that like crack is a love potion. Because like I said earlier, crack it makes you want to come back to the crack dealer.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? There's chemicals that affect your brain when you mix it together in certain ways. So most people use the ones that get you high.
Right.
Like, there's a truth, what they call like a truth serum they have, which makes you less, it brings down your inhibition. So like your guards that you have up that you try to keep stuff to the chest, you don't want to talk about, it helps to bring that down so that you'll be more susceptible to telling the truth.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's alcohol.
Hmm.
I said that's alcohol.
Yeah, that's one too. Yeah, that's definitely. But no, they have one that's a little bit more effective than that.
Okay.
So they have one. I mean, the CIA uses it. Government organizations they use it. But her riding on the broom and you know using fishing, using snails and
Right. That's what I'm talking about.
all of that. Nah, it's now can it be a chemical inside of a rattlesnake? Like the venom that they have. If you mix that venom, like you take a little bit of the venom that you have, like like drugs can be mixed to get you a different high, right? If
Okay.
you mix certain things, you'll make your brain process things in a certain way. So if you want to make yourself more susceptible to something, you might put something that you know,
So
something that gets you high, something that makes you highly addicted to that person.
so why they say that's kind of like I don't know if you ever heard this, but that's like a sherm stick. When you take some weed and dip it in the PCP, the embalming fluid,
What y'all call it?
sherm stick or some
Sherm.
juice. Yeah,
Yeah, I think where I'm from, they just call it wet.
yeah, they call it wet too. Yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, that's what they do because they get you a whole. What you said, a vomit fluid.
yeah, that's what it is. I think
Yeah, I
embalming
put it
fluid.
in there. And he said they get you on a whole nother level high.
Man, they be butt naked.
I'm trying to tell you, so you go a whole bunch of stuff. Remember they had them bath salts
Mm.
in Florida, had people eating people's face and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you want to turn your lover into a ravenous wolf? Give them this, mix this in their drink. Now they gonna be trying to eat people, make them like they got like they got rabies or something. So it's a little bit of all that. You can do a whole bunch of stuff you're not supposed to be consuming. Especially when you start mixing things together, and then on top of it, you're not sick. Well, that's the point of drugs to get you if you're sick,
Right.
and you're not sick. So that's how that would happen. You have a question?
Wow, sir.
It was long held that the island Arawak was virtually wiped out by old world diseases to which they had no immunity. But more recent scholarship has emphasized the role played by Spanish violence, brutality, and oppression, including enslavement, in their demise. So they always try to put it that it was the diseases. Yeah, the diseases didn't help, but the oppression and them killing them is what killed them. Their violence, them hanging them, them, you know, turning them into leather. That's what killed a lot of our brothers, even the slaves. The Judites. That's what killed a lot of them. It was the oppression. It wasn't even. They say diseases here, but over time, like a lot of times people don't really understand diseases like that. But
Yeah, because like you see how they was doing the Judites, they wasn't giving them any medical attention.
yeah, that's one important part. So, like when it comes to diseases, they're not as, how do you put it? Like if you're with somebody and they have a resistance to some type of disease like smallpox, they got a built up resistance to it. Because like everybody has, like chicken pox, for instance, right? Well, maybe not these younger guys, but the immunization shots are effective that you may not even have chicken pox. But back when I was growing up in the '90s, people you would catch chicken pox as a kid, and then you would never have it again, right? So what would happen is they would have it like chicken pox. A child would get it or whatever, but he has enough antibodies in his body to fight it off. So it's not because of the contact. Like people, it's like what I mean is it is because of contact, but it's not how you think. It's not because the Caucasians came around them that they just started catching diseases. You gotta think about because they was around. Like diseases aren't caught like that. You have to have somebody that's transmitting the disease, and if it's in your body with your immune system, you're not coughing and sneezing it up because your body is keeping it and is keeping it, docile. What you got to do, they found people that got sick, which is probably children, that because when you get fed by your mom, you get breastfed, you're getting her antibodies, right? You're getting a lot of her antibodies. So they're getting strong. They're strong enough to handle the disease. They'll get sick, but they're not gonna die. That's what the COVID shot is for. You'll still catch COVID, but you're not gonna die from it. Your body enough, it already recognizes it. So then it comes and it will come to fight it, right? But the thing is, the Native Americans had never seen it. So then when they would, they'll have their children, they may be sick, start coughing on them, and then they would literally take blankets that was somebody that they probably gave to their children that was sick with malaria or something like that, and they would give it to them. Say, here you go, some blankets. Because of course they need blankets, they probably cold. They didn't kill the buffalo. That was a source of food, clothing. They built their teepees with it. So they needed something to stay warm. So that's what they gave them, blankets laced with smallpox. So, and that's what would happen. So, all right, all right. Moreover, a short account of the destruction of the Indies in 1542 by Bartolome de las Casas paints a horrifying portrait of depredation, slaughter, and sexual abuse by the Spanish. A small number of mainland Arawak survive in South America. Most, more than 15,000, live in Guyana, where they represent about one-third of the Native American population. Smaller groups found in Suriname, French Guiana, and Venezuela. Their language, also called Arawak, is spoken chiefly by older adults, and a characteristic that commonly foretells the death, um, foretells the death of the language. So when only the older people speaking, not the children, the death of the language is starting to leave. The Antillian Arawak or Taino, who were agriculturalists who lived in villages, some with as many as 3,000 inhabitants, and practiced slash and burn cultivation of cassava and corn, which is maize. They recognized social rank and gave great deference to theocratic chiefs. Religious beliefs centered on a hierarchy of nature, spirits, and ancestors, paralleling somewhat the hierarchies of chiefs. Despite the complex social organization, the Antillean Arawak were not given to warfare. They were driven out of the Lesser Antilles by the Caribs shortly before um, shortly before the appearance of the Spanish. The South American Arawak inhabited northern and western areas of the Amazon basin, where they shared the means of livelihood and social organization of other tribes of the tropical forest. They were sedentary farmers who hunted and fished, lived in small autonomous settlements, and had a I can't even say it, hierarchical organization. The Arawak were found as far west as the foothills of the Andes. These camps, Arawak, however, remained isolated from the influence of the Andean civilization. Any other questions, anything? All right, now this is, let's make it bigger. This is some of the clothing. As you can see, looks very similar to how we dress. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you're gonna bring it to the camera. To the camera. So you see, they dress very similar to how we dress.
Mm-hmm.
As you see, they got like the garments that come down a little bit, ridges on the bottom, right?
Hebrews, it's like,
So I tell you, so they, you know, that's how we dress. Now, of course, we typically had shirts on, but cultural things change over time. But yeah, anybody got any questions at all? You know, one here. His name is Chief Riverwind, Chief Joseph Riverwind, the present tribe leader of the Northern Arawak tribal nation of South America and the Caribbean. Uh, dismisses the skepticism as ethnocentrism. A descendant of the Menial and Nuzum or crypto Jews. Riverwind is also among the few who believe that Native Americans share ties with the Jews. Chief Riverwind shared his atypical sentiments in an interview on Breaking Israel News. In this interview, he shared a translated a prayer which he believed to be reminiscent of the Shema prayer. The Shema Shema Nayina Papashka Hayaya, which was translated to listen, listen, people, as you gather together. We will dance before the Creator. And you see the last part of it is Yah, right? Which is like a, it's like beginning of, of course, like Yahweh. So it's talking about the Creator, which is the Most High. So there's still a lot of parallels with their language with the ancient Hebrew. Which Shema, what does that sound like?
Shema,
There you go. What does Shema mean?
quiet,
Quiet, listen.
listen.
But that's what it's saying, listen, listen. So it is very close to, it has certain things of the Hebrew language. So Riverwind explained that a while among his people, the ancient name for God is Yahya. Among his wife's ancestors, the Cherokee, they call God Yohiwa, a title with striking similarities to Yud-Ki-Va. He also carried an ark into battle, kept a 7 day of rest, had cities of refuge, and don't eat pork. Maintains Riverwind. Chief Riverwind also told Breaking Israel news of the stories that are passed down by trained storytellers that he claims existed from pre-Columbian times. One story relates how the Creator came to a man called Noah and told him the world would be covered with water, after which he built a raft to save the future of mankind. A second story he related to how mankind tried to build a tower to the sky and was dispersed by God, reminiscent of the account of the Tower of Babel. So there is evidence of them being the Jews and their stories that it comes from. Like there's even them saying, why did you take our history and our culture only to give it back to us? Because they knew of the stories of Jacob and Abraham and Noah. They knew of Noah. One of the main ones, of course, was Noah. They also knew of Moses, and I think of King David, I believe. King David may not have been as popular because you know King David he was more popular with um, the Southern Kingdom. You know what I mean? Because after they got taken into captivity, a lot of that kind of left with them, and it was just like in Solomon's time, they got taken like they started getting taken off into captivity. So it was just the Southern Kingdom. So, but they knew the stories of Noah, um, even Joseph, right? They knew that story, and Moses. They knew all of these stories before the before they even came over here. Right? Another notable incident in 1800s that refueled a dying debate was the discovery of Newark holy stones, found in a cluster of Indian mines in Newark, Ohio. Some of the stones were written in with the modern Hebrew alphabet, while others were in archaic or Paleo Hebrew. a language that dates back to pre-Columbian times. The stones contain the name of God spelled out in U-K-Vav-K, a bridged version of the Ten Commandments, and an engraving of what historians believe to be Moses, surrounded by ancient Hebrew lettering. Some years later, the Los Lunas Decalogue stone, 80-ton boulder with an abridged version of the Ten Commandments in Paleo-Hebrew, was also found in New Mexico. These discoveries sparked a reaction from both supporters and skeptics alike, while Reform leader Isaac Mayer Wise chose to undermine the stone's authenticity. Orthodox leader Isaac Gleason sided in favor of the theory. He prepared in his paper, The Occident. The sons of Jacob are walking on the soil of Ohio, many centuries before the birth of Columbus. Yeah, they still walking in Ohio. Likewise, as many historians and archaeologists as there. But he has a question though. Does anybody know why they don't want to say that the Native Americans are the tribes of Israel? You know why?
No, I
There's two
don't.
reasons why.
Um, I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, the first reason is you got somebody pretending to be you. The second reason is, how do you put it? You see what they're doing to the Israelis and giving them money and all of that? They can no longer validate giving it to them without giving it to the real Israelites. That will go against their politics. So only people that can be of anything of mention is other Caucasians. That's why you got the when they had the guys in Egypt, it was all devils. And you know, Egyptians was dark as hell.
Dark it is, right?
Yeah, like they ugly black. You know what I'm saying? They in the dark, all you see is eyeballs and teeth with them. That's they that black. And they had them basically Caucasians and like the Caucasian Arabs, like that. You know what I'm saying? The real life Arabs. That's what they had playing in the guys of Egypt. Because they the only people that could be of anybody that was important. Right? That's why they reference Rome and Greece so much. Because that's the only time like they can prove, quote unquote, that they had a great country. Like, you know, not great as it's a great place to live at, but a large and primarily, a ruling, you know, country and nation. That's only about the only time they were able to do that. So that's why they had a lot of records on it, and they never whitewashed those records. Everybody else's records they kind of whitewashed. Not they didn't make it publicly available. Like when the printing press came out, right? You was able to get more books and maybe to educate people more. Like the printing press is like how the internet is today. It changed information being shared, right? So they didn't print other people's books; they just printed their own. So of course their culture kept getting brought back, and then they just when everybody else's culture they took over somewhere, they burned all of their history down, basically, and rewrote it as their right? Because the history is only written from the winners. It's not written by the losers.
Right.
Right? All right. Any further questions at all? Any further questions? Trying to see if there's anything else on this. I can bring out. not much on the Arawaks. The one thing you'll notice that they hid a lot of their stuff because, like when they, because they didn't come to America first. Christopher Columbus, they landed in Dominican Republic first, in Puerto Rico. They went there first. So a lot of their history they wiped it out because they didn't want to be able to say that there was any of them left. So that justified them taking over their country. And then they started moving up to the North and South America, Mesoamerica. They started moving in there, making them fight each other. So a lot of the history, the only history they made available for the most part was the North American Indians. But then all of the other tribes, they kind of hide their history. So it's not much there to really pull up. You got to go to like the only people you can really find. You got to go to the books written by some of like the so-called priests and all of them. They when they wrote their books, they gave a better and more accurate depiction of what was happening to them than you would in the rest of the regular history books. Right. No other questions. Anybody on the conference call? Right. There's no questions. And, all right. Pass the class over to Peace and Officer Marshall.
Wow, this your class as always. We're gonna do the I.S.U.P.K security announcements. We're the I.S.U.P.K. Started out at 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York. Rule for new brother or sister. When a new brother or sister comes into the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They are to be saluted only. They are here to share themselves with the world. If they need transportation, the teacher will arrange it. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, he or she must get permission from the head to speak to a brother or sister. There's another 6 months in which the brother and sister will court each other. After this 6 month period, the brother and sister will get permission from the head to marry. Tithes, which is the commandment, Numbers 18:21, Malachi 3:8-10. My Isupk, 10th in the Hebrew, 10% of every penny of any increase the Lord gives you. Give to the Treasury Department or teacher. Priest fund, free will offering for priests, not mandatory. Whatsoever amount you would like. Upcoming holy convocations is the ending of the Feast of First Fruits. It's Sunday, June 12th at sundown. Remind Akim and Akawakim to check the bulletin board in the hallway. If anyone wants to be a trooper in the school, start wearing all black boots, shirts, pants, headband, and scarves, and to Google dress every time they are heading to the school. And with that, we'll get a teacher courtesy salute. In the Israel of Majah, Shabbat, Majah, Barak, Yahweh Shem Yahshua Barakatah.
Yahweh Shem Yahshua Barakatah.
Yahanna, which means hands down, class dismissed.